So this is unfolding exactly like we thought it would in a dominant scenario. We've got 90 deals in 90 days possibly pending here.
这是川普总统挥舞关税大刀后收到最好的反馈。现在络绎不绝，争相跟白宫进行协商谈判的国家至少有75个，这是非常了不起的一件事。因为贸易的协议谈判通常需要耗费数年的时间，才有可能达成一定的共识与决议。而这次川普总统只是靠着在4月2日解放日释放的一枚对等关税的高空烟火，就能收到这样的效果。
On board Air Force One, Donald Trump offered more mixed messaging, suggesting he's open to offering exemptions for some products.
You have to show a certain flexibility. Nobody should be so rigid. You have to have a certain flexibility.
Trump's tariff plan is growing more complicated and confusing with each twist and turn. Remember the country-specific tariffs that were implemented, paused, and replaced with a 10% baseline tariff? The White House says they've prompted even more world leaders to seek trade talks.
Last week, it was 75 countries wanting to come to the tariff negotiating table, and now the White House is upping that number.
130 countries have responded, and we're negotiating with them, and they've got their rate down to 10%. And so really, it's kind of almost a two-world system. There's a process about China, and that's very, very nascent, if at all, and then the process for everybody else. So the process for everybody else is orderly, it's clear, people are coming to town with great offers.
I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. The end result is we're going to get to the position of greatness for our country. We're the greatest economic power in the world if we're smart. If we're not smart, we're going to hurt our country very badly.
美国国家经济委员会主任 Kevin Hassett 在接受媒体访问时表示，目前已经有超过10个协议，为美国开出了堪称卓越，甚至是令人惊叹的条件。现在整个团队正在审慎评估这些协议是否值得接纳。他还进一步强调，自从川普开始第2个总统任期以来，美国就已经展开规模庞大的双边或多边谈判。早在川普总统宣布对等关税之前，就已经有2-3项的协议步入最终谈判阶段。尽管市场和专家对这些所谓惊人进展的谈判最终能兑现多少抱持怀疑态度，但是对川普政府而言，这已然是显著的进步，只是距离胜利仍然路途遥远。尤其川普总统原以为中国会出现在谈判名单之中，却未曾料到北京当局已经铁了心要另辟战场。
The Chinese government, on the whole, over the weekend, had acknowledged that the tariff exemptions were what they described as a small step, and even said that China was evaluating the impact. Today, though, probably because of a lot of the confusion out of the messaging from the White House, the Chinese government doubled down on their overall stance. That is, that the U.S. government should abolish the tariffs and what they describe as wrongful actions around those tariffs.
These countries in Southeast Asia, Vietnam and Cambodia in particular, they are really stuck between a rock and a hard place. They face the prospect of either having to cut some trade with their biggest trading partner, China, or face crippling tariffs from the US. As we know, Washington's biggest gripe with them is that they are being used for the transshipment of Chinese goods, either fraudulently in some cases with false labeling and things like that, to evade duties on Chinese exports. That's something that the Trump administration has made very clear they want to put an end to. So, now Vietnam is in a position where it has to decide what's in its best interest. So President Xi is there to try and compel Vietnam and other countries to stand unified. He talked in Vietnam about the importance of upholding multilateralism and standing against bullying as well. And he talked about the importance of cooperation. Now, he is able to dangle some sweeteners. They signed a series of deals on things like technology, 5G, interconnectivity and rail links in particular, which are going to bring the two countries closer together. But it's difficult to see to what extent Vietnam is going to heed to calls to resist making concessions to the US and hang in tough there. It will be keen to avoid angering Washington any further and reluctant perhaps to align itself with the main target of Trump's tariffs.
That's actually the main focus of the People's Daily today as well. The paper has devoted its entire front page plus 2 more pages to photos and articles on the trip where she's called for building a, quote, China-Vietnam community with a shared future. She also urged Vietnam to join China in opposing what he calls unilateral bullying. Our Chief North Asia correspondent Stephen Engler is with us. And Steve, I mean, she is clearly seeing some sort of diplomatic opening here.
And economic.
Sure, go through it then.
Yeah, so they had signed 45 deals. A lot of it has to do with connectivity, through railways and connectivity across the border. Keep in mind, that border between Vietnam and China has been fraught over the decades with border skirmishes. They have different railway gauges, so they didn't really have a lot of connectivity. So Xi Jinping clearly sees an opportunity here. Vietnam, for its part, is saying it will speed up the development of 3 planned railways near and across the border with China. So surely she sees this as an opportunity with the Trump administration, at least in the early going of Liberation Day, on that chart on the lawn of the White House, slapping 46% tariffs, which of course have now been dwindled down to 10% while we wait this 90% pause. But still, Vietnam was 46%, Malaysia was 24%, Cambodia was 49%. So Xi Jinping, those are the 3 countries that he's going to be going to this week, Malaysia later today, and then Cambodia, sees an opportunity here to further Belt and Road diplomacy, railroad diplomacy as it's been called. We know in Malaysia they're building the East Coast rail link that has been long delayed and also fraught with allegations of corruption. I won't go there now, but again, also in Indonesia, they're building a high-speed rail in Indonesia. So he sees this opportunity to kind of, as you said, get a coalition together of like-minded Asian nations to resist unilateral bullying from the United States.
透过未经官方管道证实的讯息得知，美国在与某些国家谈判时有提出选边站的要求。国际间也有部分媒体把这次习近平的东南亚之行视为是一次巩固关系的出访。但是从中国应对这次美国所发动的贸易战做出的反应来看，美国在自念兹的洗产地行为，中国似乎不想再缠斗，反倒是一带一路能否持续下去，是北京当局目前关心的焦点之一。
When Xi Jinping launched the Belt and Road Initiative in 2013, there were mixed reactions in the United States and throughout the West. Some viewed it as a straightforward global infrastructure program. Others saw it as little more than grandiose propaganda. Within a few years, however, many became concerned that it was part of a larger effort to expand Chinese geopolitical influence through a Sino-centric global trade network and by loading emerging economies with burdensome debt. Today, the Belt and Road Initiative has emerged as a founding pillar of China and Xi Jinping's long-term strategy to reshape the world order.
Xi Jinping's grand project is on life support. I'm talking about the BRI, or the Belt and Road Initiative. Another country has refused to sign up for it, and that too a fellow BRICS partner, Brazil. China tried hard to get President Lula da Silva on board. Last week, they hosted his advisors in Beijing. They tried to sell the grand BRI vision, but no luck. Brazil wants to keep its options open. So what changed? Well, mainly 2 things. One, he was under pressure from the US. Secondly, the BRI is not what it used to be. It started off with a bang in the last decade. More than $1 trillion invested, dozens of projects completed. It seemed like everyone wanted to sign up. But slowly, the true picture emerged. Most of the BRI deals were mired in secrecy. The projects turned into corruption scandals and the loans became a burden.
Panama is choosing a side. It has bowed down to pressure from Donald Trump. The South American nation has said that it is pulling out of China's Belt and Road Initiative. It has given Beijing a 90-day notice of its decision not to renew its involvement in the Belt and Road Initiative. This decision comes after relentless pressure from the United States to reduce Beijing's influence on the Panama Canal. During his visit to Panama, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who also speaks fluent Spanish, a language spoken in Panama, told the President, Jose Raul Mulino, that his country must limit the Chinese influence over the Panama Canal area. or the Trump administration would take the necessary measures to do so.
What a beautiful view you have.
Yes, in fact, from here, this is the center of our rail system. So from here, the line, this rail line, will connect the entire peninsula to the north and to the south.
So you can check the work here.
Yes. And of course, this is a very interesting spot. If you just look at the numbers, 1.4 billion people in China, plus 680 million in ASEAN. Just China plus ASEAN itself, we have 2 billion people, 2 billion population.
Yeah.
This is a huge market and a huge economic bloc that we have to develop.
Across the developing world, countries desperately needed new infrastructure but couldn't secure the funding. Western banks saw too much risk. China saw an opportunity. With trillions of dollars at its disposal, the Belt and Road Initiative promised a new era of global connectivity. At first, the results spoke for themselves. Critics argue that China knew exactly what it was doing, lending vast sums to nations already at high risk of default, ensuring leverage when they inevitably struggled. Supporters, on the other hand, say the issue isn't China's lending practices, but poor financial planning by the recipient countries. Regardless of intent, the result is clear: economic distress, rising inflation, and social unrest.
事实上，美中双方并不是不知道自己的问题所在。美国在制造业上的缺口、供应链的不足是无法在短期内获得改善，而中国需要高端晶片来提升科技与经济的总体发展。短期内必须依靠美国协助也是不争的事实。所以，川普总统才会在竞选期间就满怀期待，希望跟习近平进行沟通。然而，如今事态却朝着相悖的方向发展。今年1月卸任的美国驻华大使尼古拉斯·伯恩斯曾明确指出，当下的情形堪称中美关系自1979年恢复全面外交关系以来最严重的危机之一。他还强调，现在的挑战是恢复最高层的沟通，以避免两个经济体脱钩，这是大家都知道的问题，可是眼前却无法做到。当拜登总统对中国晶片限制越来越严，甚至升高到国家安全层级，让中国为维护自身权益不得不放大决，基础限制多项稀土元素跟金属出口条例，让局势就此发展到近乎无法转圜的余地。在这样的情况底下，即便是交易大师的川普总统，又如何能不被赶棘手呢？如今，中国坚持立场，不会主动求和。美国同样心高气傲，难以低头。那么，究竟谁能如当年的季辛吉那般，可以找出化解双方尴尬，让彼此放下成见，好好沟通的方法呢？或许世界只能寄望于两国有极具智慧的密使挺身而出，探寻双方能够共同为之努力的目标，在大目标的原则底下求同存异，暂时搁置争议。如此，全世界也才有喘息的机会。
To follow up, Mr. President, what if there is not a trade deal with the EU by the time of the end of your 90-day pause on reciprocal?
Oh, there'll be a trade deal, 100%. Oh, well, you think there won't be? Of course, there'll be a trade deal. Very much. They want to make one very much, and we're going to make a trade deal. I fully expect it, but it'll be a fair deal.
Are they on your priority list?
Everybody's on my priority list.
This is an important meeting. We're just trying to figure out exactly what might come from it. Does this end with exemptions? I know it's a word the White House doesn't like to use for Italy. No tariffs on wine and cars and cheese, maybe pasta. Or is she an emissary for the EU? Because this could splinter the EU.
It really could. I mean, she's presenting herself as an emissary from the EU, but the more left-leaning nations are sort of like, don't help, Ms. Maloney. You know, she comes at this from a sympathetic to Trump's perspective. She's talked about making Western civilization great again, meaning America and Europe. You know, and she is much more aligned with Trump's politics, which makes the rest of Europe very nervous. And although she is proposing that she and Trump meet with the EU President von der Leyen, and that she could serve as a go-between with them. Trump, in his presidency, has yet to meet with the EU President, and they set trade policy for the entire continent. So it's a little odd that it's being splintered.
So
like
the EU would have to sign off on anything involving Italy, essentially, right? So are we going to be talking about the Rome Accords at some point here? The president accepted the invitation?
It's possible.